names are starting to get named about who colluded to steal and circulate Michigan signals. The national media doesn't seem to want much. Well, I shouldn't say the national media, but one particular network in the national media doesn't seem to want anything to do about it. And we're going to push back a little bit on one narrative that got created yesterday. We're going to do that on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Tuesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. So I told you on the Monday episode, 3 schools before SI it implicated. SI had their drop late. They implicated 3 schools, right? I was aware of what 3 schools they were, but that's not my place to report it. It's the people who have kind of found all of this stuff out, right? And whatever. But John U. Bacon just tweeted about, it's local time, 3:28 in the PM, Eastern Standard Time, and John U. Bacon at 3:09 tweeted, for what it's worth, Big Ten's Tony Petitti was informed today that the 2 programs which fed Purdue Michigan signals before the 2022 Big Ten title game were Rutgers and Ohio State. Not clear if rules were broken, doesn't directly affect Michigan's situation, but raises questions, re relative competitive advantage. I'm going to defer back to what Brian from MGO Blog put. Doesn't that technically kind of mean the same thing in terms of the scouting aspect? And then certainly there is people out there that want to talk about the electronic surveillance and whatever and all of that, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Again, I am not well versed enough in the NCAA bylaws to tell you what those are, but we're clearly talking about a Big Ten situation here. And when you add in, again, the fact that Jim Harbaugh is on the verge of potentially being suspended indefinitely, Michigan will, of course, fight back immediately in terms of an injunction. It again, at least calls into question for the Big Ten, like, what are we doing here? So this is the start of it. Expect another article to come, whether it's sometime, I would imagine, the next 24 hours or so. That will have some names that are named. I'll give you a couple. One of them has been brought up on this show before, and it was in one of the mailbag podcasts, Brent Sebeski at Ohio State. He was once with Jim Knowles out at Oklahoma State. If you want to, kind of just figure out why is this below the line staffer moving and keeping a below the line kind of situation, I'll let you draw some parallels. The other one is Jordan Huxtable from Rutgers. So those are some names I expect to be named, and whether they are or aren't, they are relevant to this entire thing that is going on here. Okay. So I think the interesting thing is to get into the SI article, which certainly shed a little bit of light on this entire thing by actually today. That it was dropped around midnight initially, and then they updated it with the 2 pages that they got that fully break down Michigan's play calls, and it's mostly redacted, but was confirmed with Michigan coaches that they had the correct play calls and all of this, right? So there's a lot of people out here who are now suddenly moving the goalpost to the electronic, Connor Stallions going in electronically, getting the signals through intermediaries, and saying like, oh, it's one thing when before the whole argument was, if you go into a game and you have all the signals and whatever, that's an unfair competitive advantage. And now if you figure them out in game, that's one thing. If you figure them out off a TV, that's another thing. Well, this obviously destroys that narrative. Therefore, now it's all about, he had a cell phone, people with cell phones recording the signs, something that literally any of you can do. It's legal for you to go to a game and do so if you want to. So it's kind of one of those just kind of weird things. I'm still saying it's very much in a gray area altogether, right? So it is one of those things where it's up to your own interpretation as far as that's concerned of, is Connor still skirting in the gray area? Was this part of the gray area, which is more illegal, all that kind of stuff? So it's just interesting to kind of pay attention to. Now, this isn't the only thing that's kind of circulated. I had a source who had given me they had gotten it from another school who they had gotten it from. It's from, I can't show it to you here, but so you just have to, this is a trust me bro right now. Okay. It was a 7-page document that had all pictures of Don Brown signals from 2018. And it was very clear. It looked very much similar to what you're seeing on SI. Okay. Very, very similar. But it had pictures going along with the rest of it. Okay. So I have not authenticated that document. So I can't tell you for sure. We're not putting this out. I do know that Michigan is aware of it and has it in their possession. So I expect someone else to do the authentication work there. That's not within my scope and ability to do. But this was given to me. It was given to me by my source who had gotten it from a school that is currently in the Big 12. So just to kind of give you the idea of how much some of these things circulate, right? So that's kind of the crux of this entire argument here, is that these things do circulate. The sign stealing thing, especially as it pertains to Michigan, is relatively pervasive. Michigan is just as much as some want to claim victim, say Michigan, we are victims of Michigan. Some of those are the same programs who are victimizing Michigan. Okay. Again, we're talking about methodology with a practice that is extremely, extremely pervasive. And that is something that is certainly worth noting and paying attention to. And I know that it's the narrative might change a little bit, but it is interesting that one particular outlet doesn't seem to want to cover any of these kind of somewhat bombshells that have been dropped by multiple national writers at national outlets. Because we've seen in the last 24 hours, we've seen the AP put something out, which the AP they don't even get fully aggregated, right? You can, if you're a different outlet, you can just print AP as is and just have the dateline AP. And then you have Sports Illustrated, who's got some pretty hard evidence here, authenticated, as they've said. And then you even have an opinion article from Stuart Mandel at The Athletic, kind of talking about all of these things. And he's kind of not fully turning course from where he stood before, but he is certainly kind of changing his tune a little bit as to all of this. And yet there's a 4-letter network out there that's done none of this, that they haven't covered any of this. The only thing that they've covered is the fact that Michigan is subject to disciplinary action per the notice from the Big Ten yesterday. So that's curious. Let's talk about that here in a moment as it pertains to this entire thing. But before we do, you can score early this NFL season with FanDuel. It's America's number one sportsbook. Listen, it's not just the NFL. Obviously, there's college and all of that. But and with that in mind, right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's right. You pick the team to win, you get $150 in bonus bets back if you win that. Just $5, right? So you can just continue to enjoy your time doing all of the sports betting things, whether it's overs, unders, spread, different kind of player props, all those types of things. All of those are available to you. And the great part of it is that you can get paid instantly with instant withdrawals. It is an absolutely fantastic way to just enhance your sports watching. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off NFL season. Continue on in college season. College basketball is happening now. Michigan. Hope you didn't take Michigan State if that's the case. So FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so as we said, there's a 4-letter network that is not really covering this. I have the Michigan page bookmarked because we often aggregate things from ESPN on Wolverines Wire. It's just kind of filler stuff. And if I go here and look, you've got hour 1, hour 2 of Carl and Joe, whatever that is. Carlin versus Joe. Carlin and Joe discuss how long how long Jim Harbaugh is. And it just says Michigan man for now. I don't know exactly what that's all about. There's something with Greeny. You've got McAfee and Stephen A. Smith who are saying that Michigan should be banned from the college football playoff until this plays out, which could take literally years, by the way. You got Paul Feinbaum show, hours 1 and 4. Feinbaum, Michigan sign stealing probe looks very bad for Harbaugh. Purdue's cover highlights SVP's bad beats. I mean, that's whatever. That's a thing if you want to go get involved in the FanDuel of it all. Big Ten informs Michigan discipline is a possibility. Wolverines channel Flair, embrace role as villain. Something's missing here. Maybe there's a bombshell story that others have already authenticated. One of them being the AP, the Associated Press, which again is something that ESPN often and quite regularly just throws AP articles just up on their site all willy-nilly. For some reason, it doesn't pass muster on this one for them. That's kind of curious. It's kind of almost like the narrative does not fit, or I should say the story does not fit their narrative, which is pretty interesting. Don't you think? Why do I say all this? It's just, again, to point to you what a political hit job is. And Reese Davis can come and say no one's out to get Jim Harbaugh. Okay, that doesn't prove anything. You can say that all you want. But you are just as complicit in the political hit job when you're out there just saying all of the things that you are saying about Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. You know, those who stay will be cheaters, is what he said on College Game Day. Right? So he has declared Michigan, who is yet to receive a notice of allegations from the NCAA, a cheater. You know, so like, again, we don't know how the NCAA interprets its own rule. There's people that will definitively tell you one way or the other, but the NCAA has yet to come out and say, here is how we interpret our own bylaw. So there's a lot of people that are going to have opinions on one side or the other. Michigan's making its case clearly that this is a gray area. The NCAA has yet to come out and say, this is how we interpret it. It's just a bunch of people like Reese Davis out there. And I'm not trying to come at Reese solely here, but being judge, jury, and executioner when the NCAA has yet to do exactly that to itself, right? It has not given itself that type of power in the moment in terms of coming out and saying, here's what it is, here's a notice of allegations, this is the rule you broke. Because certainly the NCAA could investigate and say, we're all good here. That's a possibility. I'm not saying it's a probability, but it is a possibility. But they could also come out and say, you broke this rule. You maybe even broke some other rules that this is kind of crossing into the gray area or whatever. I'm not saying there are any other rules. I'm just saying the NCAA is the judge, jury, and executioner, and it has not even exercised that power before other people have. So I think that's relatively interesting as far as that's concerned, that ESPN is not covering the essential rebuttal here for whatever reason. They are not providing both sides. They're providing one side, and that's going scorched earth on Michigan. I'm actually kind of surprised, and I'm not looking at the Ohio State site here, that they have not. I would not be surprised to see. I guess we can look real quick. When you look at the Ohio State site on ESPN, what they have here, if they have anything about the NCAA saying that there is no known connection. No known connection. Okay, that's not on here either. So, okay, to be fair, they aren't using the Yahoo thing for anything, even though that was certainly the start of all of the reporting on this. Okay. No known connection. We talked about that very briefly on Monday's show. I'm seeing a lot of people, including Stuart Mandel, who had not like a defense necessarily, like not a full-throated defense of Michigan, and we'll get to his article in segment 3 here. But he didn't have a full defense of Michigan. However, he does say in his article on The Athletic, subscription required, I'm going to tell you that, a mysterious investigative firm reportedly unearthed and handed the NCAA evidence documenting former Michigan staffer Connor Stalions' scheme that led to certain Michigan defenders in the media launching the conspiracy theory that Ohio State coach Ryan Day had a family connection to the investigator, which the NCAA and Big Ten apparently looked into and debunked. Now, I want to come back against that right here. And I know like there's going to be all kinds of you Buckeye people that are going to watch or listen to this, and this is going to draw your ire, and you're going to say different things. This is not me saying this. This is my source. I spoke to a source that is very close to this situation, a different source than the one I referenced earlier, who had told me that is not really truly the case. Debunked is not the right word. No known source is not the same as there is no source. There is no connection. Okay? That is an important distinction, because from what my source tells me, there are connections there. And we'll see that, I'm not an investigative reporter. There are people who are working on this. And at some point, I believe, in the relative near future, you are going to hear a little bit more about that. But I don't know 100% when or what. That's all I have at this point, right? I'm not hiding something in terms of this. This is just what I'm being told by people who are actually in the know. All right? So just stay tight. Hang tight. Stuff is going to come out. And just understand, debunked is the wrong word to use. It's no known connection. So we'll find out. But more is going to continue to unfurl throughout this entire thing. Before we move on to Stuart Mandel's article as a whole, as well as maybe we'll work in a little SI, it kind of just depends on where we go. I do want to note, and I totally lost my train of thought as I was saying that. Maybe we just move on. Maybe because I just completely forgot what I was going to say there. Oh, well, there is another thing. I confirmed with a different source. Again, we're talking to a heck of a lot of people this time around. Normally, some of you who have followed me for a while, you might know that there's times I do mire myself in getting into some things, and sometimes I don't. Recruiting, haven't really gotten into it as much as I used to from 2016 through 2019. But sometimes we know some things. I can tell you this: the Michigan, the person who went to Michigan, according to these different things that have come out and said, like, a sign stealer came to Michigan with all of these things. Just to debunk this real quick, I've been told that person is not Connor Stallions. Okay, this isn't Michigan being like, all right, come back into the fold, buddy. Let's now give us what you got. That's not what's happening here. Okay, so I just want to confirm. Actually, I've confirmed that kind of, I think, with every source I have. So if I recall correctly, so just to give you a little narrative pushback, that's not truly the case. We're gonna move on. We're gonna get into some of this athletic article here that it's an opinion piece, but I think it's really poignant by Stuart Mandel, even if it does have that one. I don't want to, label him as not being fair here, because I think for the most part he is. But we'll go into that here in a moment. Before we do, you might be in the market to try to get yourself into Michigan basketball's season opener tonight. Or maybe you're thinking of going to Happy Valley and seeing Michigan at Penn State. I know I'm so excited for that. I had a dream that I was in Happy Valley. I do love going to Penn State. It's my favorite road trip for Michigan. There's different ways that you can go about that, but the most effective way, the way that leaves you the least amount of anxious, the way that makes it so for a fact that you've got everything buttoned down, would be Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater events near you with last-minute killer deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. There have been so many times that I have, not even with me. I'm going to give you a better example. I had a friend come in from out of town. Didn't go through Gametime, right? He went through on my own personal connects. Flew his whole family in. It ended up not working out. They didn't get his tickets. I ended up having to make some high-level calls to make sure that he got into the game. He wouldn't have had to worry about any of that if he went through Gametime instead of going through me. I'm not Gametime. So they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. That's one of the great parts about Gametime. They've got deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. So if you want to go to the basketball game tonight, check Gametime. It's the place to find last-minute seats, find exclusive flash deals, sponsor deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And with Gametime Guarantee, it means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets to the same section in a row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first order. You take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Terms apply. Again, create that account. Redeem your code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I really wish I could remember where I was going with my one thought. I feel like I was going to drop some knowledge and then it just evaded me. That happens, right? It often happens. So obviously we got the three names, like I said, at the top of the show. Ohio State, who is certainly kind of seem to have their hands in a lot of different things, right? I mean, I told you, sit tight on the PI stuff. There's going to be a lot of Ohio State people that say that I'm just a kooky Madookie, as Colin Cowherd called Chris Ballas. That I'm just a kooky Madookie Michigan person. That doesn't, fine. If that's what you want to think, that's fine. Go ahead. Obviously, all of these things have played out, right? This expose that's coming out, I had told you about weeks ago. And, it certainly goes a long way, right? It's more expansive, even likely, than what is being communicated to me or what's being communicated through people. But Stuart Mandel came out and kind of gave his opinions about this, everything that's going on with Michigan and some of these other schools, right? And talked about how these things would not have happened under Jim Delaney. They were happening in the SEC. Then Mike Slive comes in. They're no longer happening in the SEC. Jim Delaney's gone. Now they're happening in the Big Ten. There's a couple points that I think is really interesting here, because he's basically saying this is a make or break moment for Tony Petitti, only half a year in to his role as the commissioner. I fully agree, because if you suspend Michigan or you suspend Jim Harbaugh, while there is due process, and the NCAA actually says, you know what, we find that this doesn't violate our bylaws, everything's good and clean and copacetic, even if it's years down the road. I mean, you've just signed your own death warrant. It's not going to get to that. Certainly, this is gonna get resolved sooner than later in terms of Michigan versus the Big Ten. But as it kind of alludes to, to be able to be able to drop the hammer, as it says here, let's read a little bit and I'll give my thoughts here. As it sits at the center of college football's juiciest and most farcical scandal in years, the once regal Big Ten is becoming something much less becoming. The conference's two-time defending champion, Michigan, stands accused by other league members of a convoluted espionage scheme, and new commissioner Tony Petitti appears close to taking action against head coach Jim Harbaugh and or his program. Meanwhile, two reports emerged Monday about a former Big Ten staffer alerting Michigan of documents with the Wolverines 2022 signals he says were shared with him by other league schools. If true, some of the same rival coaches imploring Petitti to drop the hammer on Michigan reportedly had staff members colluding with each other to steal the Wolverines signals themselves. The finger pointing, the tattletaling, the gossiping, it's a bad look for all involved. In fact, they've all but traded rules with the Big Ten's longtime nemesis, the SEC, for which 4 years was notorious for schools turning on each other, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then he kind of gets into that a little bit more. As he says here, whether you're someone who believes Michigan deserves whatever wrath comes its way, or whether you're a Michigan fan with a newfound expertise on due process, it appears from the outside as the league coaches are telling the commissioner what to do. If so, this might be a case of trying to initiate the new guy after watching the in-over-his-head Warren clumsily handle the decision of whether or when to play the 2020 season in his own first year on the job. So I think that's it's an interesting distinction. I do believe it was the SI article that basically said that it would cause essentially irrevocable damage between Michigan and the Big Ten. I do agree with that if the Big Ten does decide that it is going to punish Michigan, because again, Michigan believes that it is I don't want to say in the right. I don't think that that's 100% correct, but certainly that's the offending member, the offending person is no longer with the program, okay? And that would mean that the punishment is maybe a little bit harsher than it should be. I don't, if the Big Ten said fine, you know, like as in we're going to issue you a fine, I'm sure Michigan would say, okay, let's just be done with it. But I think that when you already have the person of interest in question no longer with the program, that already is a punishment, right? Michigan does not have its sign stealer, which is what he was hired to do to begin with, even there. So it's just an interesting thing, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of how this plays out. Again, I would expect Michigan to go. It's going to continue to scorch the earth. It will go full scorched earth if everything, if everything goes kind of as expected in terms of. I would still think that Tony Petitti is not being. I don't think he's being. I think he's too afraid of these other Big Ten teams being mad at him and thinks, well, I can punish one. What's the harm in that? Right? Listen, there's other people who are potentially involved. You might note that Mark Silverman, I'm just speculating here. You might note that Mark Silverman, the president of Fox Sports, is a Michigan alum. Maybe he's involved. Okay? That certainly, when you have Dennis Dodd saying the Big Ten's considering a TV ban, you think a Michigan alum who runs the network that runs basically everything keep in mind that the CBS and NBC deals are actually subject through Fox Sports, who has the rights, right? The rights are granted to them. You think he's going to be all for that? He's going to be cool with that? Big Ten Network's a Fox property on top of being a Big Ten property. This is just going to go fine, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out as far as that's concerned. We're still learning what the strategy is for Michigan. We're still learning what the Big Ten's thinking it's going to do, what it is going to do. And it's just going to continue to be the highest drama possible, clearly. And I'm as curious as anyone else at exactly how this all goes down, because certainly no one knows for sure, but certainly as well, stuff with these other schools coming out doesn't matter if it's from Michigan, just the same way as a lot of people say it doesn't matter if Ohio State hired a PI firm. It doesn't matter because it's just that Michigan did wrong. Okay, well then same thing would apply to Ohio State, Purdue, and Rutgers in this case. All right. So that's all we've got for at least now. If we do another show today, this is not a promise of another show for all the people who asked me to drop a second show in a day. If some other huge thing comes to light when we get home from the basketball game at like midnight, then maybe we'll do another one. But most likely it will be a Wednesday show. So know that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will be back soon. Peace.